Hi, Generation to Generation viewers. My name is Brittany Trafton, and I serve at Kingswood University as the Director of Enrollment. Kingswood is an academic institution located in Sussex, New Brunswick, on the east coast of Canada. And Kingswood is dedicated to preparing Christians to serve Christ in ministry positions throughout the world, all for God's glory. I graduated from Kingswood from the Bachelor of Theology program in 2010. I received a robust theological education that has served me well both personally and professionally. I've gone on for further study at both Asbury and Princeton, but Kingswood will always be home because it's at Kingswood where the Lord changed me. And although at Kingswood we offer several undergraduate bachelor degrees and we offer 3 Associates of Arts degrees, I'd like to share with you specifically about our Master of Arts in Pastoral Theology. Our MA in Pastoral Theology is designed to be completed within 1 calendar year. Half of it's to be completed online, while the other half is to be completed on-site at Kingswood, which equates to only 2 visits to campus. Furthermore, with our MA, it's designed for those who are in ministry. Each student is expected to be engaged in at least 20 hours of ministry per week. And the purpose for that is because Kingswood is keen on integrating both theory and practice. The theory you gain in the classroom is immediately applied in your ministry setting. We take that an even step further by the final project that you would do for your MA. It's called the Guided Comprehensive Project. And what you do with that is you're taking everything that you've gained from the MA in theory, and you're working out a plan of how you're going to further apply that in your ministry setting. So some students take a very practical approach of where they work out a Bible series study, of where they take different topics and they work it out. Some doing it on something of what does it mean to be an integrated church, while others will do a research-focused project where they'll take a point of faith or something that their church is struggling with that they're wondering what does Scripture say about it, so they dig deeper into that. The cost point of our MA is 8,100 Canadian dollars, which equates to about 5,600 US dollars for those who would be paying in American dollars. You may be eligible for the Kingswood grant. You may also be eligible to receive the Wesleyan Loan Grant from headquarters. I do hope that you continue to grow in the Lord through today's sessions, through generation to generation. And I look forward to connecting with you about the next steps that the Lord has you on for ministerial preparation. And thus I look forward to connecting with you about what it may look like for you to study at Kingswood.
Well, hello, Alex. How are you today? You good?
I'm doing well. How are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. I haven't seen you in person since you've grown that ferocious beard of yours, so it looks fantastic. I just want you to know that. Well, we're
Thanks.
so glad. We're so glad to have you on with us. I've told you this on the phone as we've chatted about this session that I think out of everybody for all the sessions, I'm most excited about yours. Just because of the perspective that you bring. And so no pressure. You don't want to bomb in front of all these people watching, okay? There's people from Sweden on, okay? But anyway, let me start with this. And there was a conversation that we had specifically about marketing, because what you're finding, and there was a book that you read that I think you're going to talk about in a second, you found that marketing is actually shifting more toward older adults rather than towards younger people. And so we had a conversation about the price or the stock for Lego has actually grown faster than the price of gold in the last 8 or 10 years, which is crazy. And then all of these companies are marketing towards the nostalgia of boomers, which is fascinating. And so talk a little bit about that real quick, the book that you read, because that's fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. That's been one of the things that I've discovered about that is a book entitled Generation Ageless. Looks like this. It's completely a marketing book. There's just a marketing book that I think the authors, they are discovering that companies really they didn't need to target necessarily the 18 to 25 demographic that was always like basically the hottest thing to do. What they're discovering is that baby boomers were really the group that they really need to start to kind of go after. And really just look into companies like Barbie, Lincoln Logs, Legos, and different places. They're finding that they need a market to them so that they can actually buy these products for their grandchildren, and then also kind of hit the nostalgia button as well. I think it was about a year or two back, I started kind of watching commercials even a little bit more carefully, and I was even watching the way that car commercials would even target just even the retirees, and different companies would just basically kind of be looking at kind of getting into those pocketbooks. And so that was really kind of influencing the fact that, not necessarily saying that we need to always be about marketing, but what are we as a church really doing to engage older adults the same way that companies that are for profit are going after them?
Yeah, great question, insight, because as we just heard from Dan, he talked about being young current, but he also talked about the intentionality of not pushing older generations out, but how do we include, be intentional, as you mentioned, from even the business sector. So from your perspective, from what you've read, your experience, what does that look like?
I think it means that we as a church have to move together as one. And I think that means that in one sense we're going to have those who are kind of more in the rabbits, like they're early adopters to change. I think that it means that they might actually have to slow down a little bit. And I think those of us who are a little bit more hesitant on change, we're kind of a little bit more on the kind of the turtle pace. I think it means that we might have to actually speed up. And I think we're going to have to carry one another at different times. One of the things I spoke on over the summer was when you look in the book of Joshua, when they basically marched around Jericho, they did it together as a people. This was the people of God moving together as one. They were in fact, in the heroes of faith, I mean, that's one of the few people that are identified as the people of God, kind of recognizes that. So it's a whole group that moves together.
Yeah, well, let me ask you this. What is lost in the church if we're not engaging older adults and younger people together?
Yeah, I think we need the two. Absolutely. I mean, you definitely need the two. I mean, when you look at baby boomers, and I think there's 75 million baby boomers, and then you also look at millennials, I mean, that they're actually going to compete. Millennials are actually going to compete with being one of the largest demographics in America. And so we as a church, we're going to have to engage both of them. And I think if we don't do that, we lose two of these demographics. We lose two of these people in terms of salvation, soul, and just forming them spiritually. But I think one of the biggest things that we lose out on is we lose the bridge. And what I mean by the bridge is we lose the bridge from the past, and we lose the bridge to the future if we do not figure out ways to engage them. Our older adults are the bridge to the past. They're the ones that have the stories. They're the ones that can remember the faith formation that was taking place. They're the ones that remember the testimonies. They remember the stories of what happened in the church, or even what happened in the early days. But then at the same point in time, if we don't engage with our millennials, we lose the hope. Millennials, I mean, the next generation, that's the hope of the church. And so both of these groups are so vital that you can't really have one without the other.
I love that. So, I think what you're touching on is there's a mindset in a lot of churches that I've heard this idea that we need to become younger, which I think unintentionally pushes older people out the door, and then it makes it feel like older adults lose their voice or lose their place within the church. And so have you seen that kind of unintentionally happen when we use phrases like, we need to become younger as a church? It kind of removes the voice that older adults have.
I mean, ageism, that is something that is very, very true. And the bottom line is that nobody, no matter what demographic, no matter what your age is, nobody wants to feel undervalued. It doesn't matter if you're old or young. So it's true. The way that we say things, the way we word things, we can actually cause some hurt depending on what we're trying to accomplish. I think that it's so vitally important. We have to move forward. We are going to have to move forward. But I think the way we go about it, we have to make sure that we are doing it in a way that says your value may be changing, your purpose might be changing, but let us walk alongside you and show you what things could actually look like, what things could actually be.
Great point. As you know, we have the chat room open, and so I want to throw out a question that was asked by Ashlyn Luttrell. And so she asks, how do you initiate an attitude of change in senior adults?
Oh, I think you have to show them the value of what they have done and what they have contributed to, and how whatever it is that's being brought about, you kind of stand up, you're standing on those shoulders, showing that this is still going to be something that's needed, and it kind of makes that connection to them. But we couldn't do what was about to happen without what you've done before. I think you celebrate that. I think it's okay to actually have a time of celebrating something that has served its purpose and is accomplishing those things, and actually kind of have people to share those stories of what those things done, but then to actually kind of have them to contribute as well. I think it's Book of Joel, chapter 2, verse 20. I mean, talks about your old men will dream dreams and your young men will see visions. Our older adults, they have dreams. I mean, they have dreams of what the church could look like and could be. And we need those stories and those testimonies. And the same way, our younger people, those are the ones with the visions. I mean, they have the strength, they have the energy, they have the enthusiasm to want to accomplish things. And they look towards our older adults for the credibility. They look to our older adults for the resources, not just financial resources, but resources in the sense of, am I going down the right path?
Right.
So I think it's kind of helping to guide how you're going to implement that change goes a long way.
So Alex, you talked about making people feel valued and how we all want to feel valued, and I think that I totally agree with what you're saying. So in that regard, and you're talking about the experience of older adults that they have, there's a question that came in from the chat that's a really good question. It's from Richard Hall, and it says, how do you honor older adults and show them value while staying relevant to younger families?
One of the biggest thing, trying to share that with the previous question, is to establish the relationship and actually have them share what it is that they've done, that they were a part of. Actually have them share their testimony of how they were formed in their faith. Bring them into the conversation that you're having with your younger adults. And I think it's also just kind of putting the two of them in the same room together, having young adults, younger people, and older people in the same room, and looking at them and saying, younger people, older adults want to have a relationship with you. And then looking at the older adults and saying, younger people actually want to be around you. You're not going to agree on the same things. You're going to go about things differently. But the bottom line is that you want to actually have the same kind of relationship. Find the places of agreement. Find the places, younger people, millennials, are so huge into more of the liturgical things today. And so kind of finding that commonality. It's not going to look the same way that perhaps some of the older people went through liturgy, but the bottom line is that they're both going about it.
So what have you, when you put younger people and older adults in the room together, how have you seen that play itself out? Because I think in my experience, we have this mentality that it will never work if we put younger people and older people in a room together. So what's been your experience with that?
Well, some of the things that we have done, we've established some prayer partnerships between our older adults and our younger people. We've done some game nights. We've had some different kind of get-togethers and parties. We have a kind of like a work team that's kind of comprised of both collegiates and older adults and working together. One of the things that I have heard and seen is that people that they did not know even existed, they're now finding them to be actually a person. I mean, that's both on the younger people as well as the older people. Those preconceived ideas that existed are now kind of being put aside, and allows them to be able to communicate about these spiritual matters.
So how do you, practically, how have you, from your experience, your role at College Wesleyan, keep older generations engaged? And so you mentioned a little bit, but practically speaking, if someone's watching, how do you set that up? How do you keep that engagement? It sounds like you mentioned like communication, intentional. I mean, you've been very intentional in creating those spaces. What have you done to make that happen?
I think you have to go you still have to meet the needs of the older adults. There's so many transitions that they're walking through, talking about, have some different seminars or talk back groups that will kind of help them where they are, not just spiritually, but also physically. What kinds of self help seminars are needed, preparing a will, and different things that are kind of transitions that they're walking through. I think it's still kind of making sure that you are doing activities with them. But one of the biggest things that we've done to kind of help with the intentionality is it's instead of just slapping an intergenerational tag on every single thing that we're doing with our older adults.
Right.
We have kind of asked ourselves these three questions. Is this an opportunity for us to be a steward of this, an opportunity to sponsor this, or an opportunity to be a partner with this? And so stewarding it kind of gives our older adults to say, like, we're not running this ministry opportunity, but this is something in which we could support, whether it's through just showing up, whether it's through prayer, whether it's supporting a fundraiser or a mission trip. We can be a steward of this opportunity that's happening in the church. It could be something that the youth are just doing completely on their own, or something that we want to kind of participate. Sponsorship. I mean, sometimes there's things that our older adults are just going to sponsor. A lot of those are kind of like the seminars or trips or get-togethers. But is this kind of something in which, as we sponsor, we can make this more well-known through the other groups of the church and to help them? And then a partnership, that's kind of when we did a couple of Christmas parties with our younger people or even our game nights, to actually have a true partnership. I mean, work together, actually have people of different demographics at the table with the planning and the implementation of something. But those have been kind of our three guiding principles that allow us to make sure that we are intentional with the things that we're doing.
And that reminds me, actually, it was your church that did like a gingerbread house making contest, right? And so it's brilliant. It's so simple to bring different generations in the room and do something like that. And one of the rules was that you had to have an older adult on your team and a younger person on your team. And so it wasn't just getting people in the same room of different generations, but it was actually interacting together. Hey, we have 2 minutes left.
Yep.
I want to ask you this question that came in from the chat. This is from Curtis Cecil. And it says this: almost all of our typical evangelical tools were written and designed for the younger generation. So how do we teach our churches to best witness to an unsaved, unchurched, older generation?
Wow, that's a great question.
Great question. Yeah.
It's a
Curtis,
great question.
you're a genius.
I would say that we have to make sure that just because they are older, and I think this is what Curtis is alluding to, just because a person is older does not mean that they are saved, that they are being spiritually transformed. I think that we have to look at our current practices, the current ways that we are discipling, and I think we almost have to do what's almost kind of call it a reverse catechism, in the sense of there are things that we've actually raised our children up to kind of know and to do. There's certain things we want them to memorize the 10 Commandments. Basically look at our children's ministry type of things. We have to kind of reverse that with our older adults. We cannot assume that the things that they know or that they grew up with that they still know and believe. I mean, there's so many different kind of mental things that are going on and just physical changes that are happening. I mean, they might not remember that they actually are saved. There's so many changes and transitions that are happening within the church that they actually might think, well, if we're going to change this about the church, well, maybe that means that this is also changing about who I believe about Christ to be. And so I think you have to just kind of continue to make sure that we are kind of holding on to those foundational truths, the things that we want our kids to have. We need to make sure that we're giving those same things to our older adults and reminding them. And I think the biggest thing is, amidst all the change, no matter what changes look like, there is that one piece that they can hold on to, and who Christ is in their heart and in their life and I think that is something that they can hold on to all the way up until they pass from this life into the next.
I love it. Alex, thank you for doing what you're doing. I remember the first time I ever met you, you said that I heard something along the lines of you're a senior pastor, and I was like, I know the senior pastor at his church. He's not a senior pastor. And then it was clarified, no, the senior adults pastor.
Senior is right.
And I love it. You're a young guy doing great things with an older generation. Thank you for doing what you're doing. It's been awesome to have you on here. At this point, we're going to pass it over to Heath and Tony, and you can tell us what's going on next.